The gentle hum of the bus engine had lulled me into a dangerous comfort. After a 16-hour shift at the hospital, my body had surrendered to exhaustion despite my best efforts. I remember fighting to keep my eyes open, the city lights blurring outside the window as my head bobbed against the cold glass. The late-night bus was nearly empty. Just me, a couple of teenagers in the back, and an elderly man clutching a plastic bag of groceries. The scent of rain and diesel fuel hung in the air, mixing with the faint antiseptic smell that always clung to my scrubs after work. I never meant to fall asleep. I never meant to miss my stop. I certainly never meant to end up here. The first thing I noticed when I woke was the softness beneath me. Too soft. Too smooth. Hospital-grade cotton sheets had a certain roughness to them, and my own bedding at home was worn thin from too many washes. This was different. Like sinking into a cloud. My fingers instinctively stretched out, feeling the cool, silky texture of what could only be absurdly expensive sheets. My eyes flew open in alarm. This wasn't my apartment. This wasn't the bus. The ceiling above me was high and ornate, with intricate crown molding I'd only ever seen in magazines. A crystal chandelier hung in the center, catching light even though the room was dim. I shot upright, my heart hammering against my ribs, and took in my surroundings. The bedroom was massive, easily 3 times the size of my entire studio apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows were covered by heavy drapes, allowing just a sliver of early morning light to peek through. The furniture was dark wood, polished to a high shine. A fireplace with a marble mantel dominated one wall. "Where am I?" I whispered to no one, my voice cracking with panic. My scrubs were gone. Instead, I wore a silk nightgown that definitely wasn't mine. The thought of someone changing my clothes while I was unconscious sent a wave of nausea through me. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, noticing my bare feet against what felt like a genuine Persian rug. My nurse's instincts kicked in. Assess the situation, find an exit, stay calm. That's when I heard the door open. I froze, watching as a tall figure stepped into the room. The morning light from the hallway silhouetted him, leaving his face in shadow, but I could make out broad shoulders beneath an impeccably tailored suit. The scent of expensive cologne drifted toward me, something woodsy with notes of amber and spice. "You're awake." His voice was deep, accented, somehow both soft and commanding at once. He moved closer, and I could see him more clearly now. Dark hair, expertly styled. A strong jaw with just the right amount of stubble. Eyes so intensely blue they seemed almost unnatural. Handsome in the way that powerful, dangerous things often are, like admiring the beauty of a predator while knowing it could tear you apart. Behind him, another man stood at the door, wider, with a blank expression and the unmistakable bulge of a weapon beneath his jacket. "Who are you?" I demanded, pulling the sheets around me like armor. "Where am I? Why did you bring me here?" The man tilted his head slightly, studying me with an unsettling intensity. "You don't remember?" "Remember what?" I fell asleep on the bus, my voice caught as fragments of memory surfaced. The bus stopping. Someone boarding, not at a regular stop. Raised voices. Something pressed against my face. The sharp smell of chemicals. Then nothing. "You were about to be taken," he said it matter-of-factly, as if informing me of the weather. "My men were following a target. They saw him board your bus with 2 others. They were watching you, waiting for the right moment." He stepped closer, and I pressed myself against the headboard. "You were very lucky, Malishka. Very lucky I found you first." "Found me? You kidnapped me." I tried to keep my voice steady, but fear made it tremble. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I saved you. Then why am I here and not at a police station? Or my home? Who are you?" He unbuttoned his suit jacket and sat on the edge of the bed, ignoring how I flinched away. "My name is Alexander Volkov. This is my home. You are here because you are safe here." The name struck a chord of recognition. I'd heard it before, whispered in the emergency room when certain patients came in with suspicious injuries. Seen it in newspaper headlines about businesses changing hands under mysterious circumstances. Alexander Volkov, the Russian, the ghost who controlled half the city's underworld. "You're..." I couldn't finish the sentence. "Yes." He didn't need me to elaborate. He knew what people called him, what he was. "What do you want from me?" My medical training was the only thing keeping me from complete panic. The practiced calm I used when facing the worst traumas in the ER. Alexander reached out, and I held my breath as his fingers gently tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "What is your name?" I hesitated, wondering if giving him my name would somehow make my situation worse, but he already knew where I lived, where I worked. He could find out easily enough. Eliza Chen. Eliza. He said my name slowly as if tasting it. Dr. Eliza Chen, emergency medicine, 27 years old, lives alone, works too much. He recited these facts about my life with casual precision. No family in the city, no close friends, no one who would immediately notice if you disappeared. A chill ran down my spine. How do you... I make it my business to know things, Malishka. Stop calling me that, whatever it means. His smile widened slightly. It means little one, a term of endearment. We are not endeared to each other, I snapped, fear giving way momentarily to anger. You had no right to bring me here, to change my clothes, to... The women who work for me attended to you, he interrupted smoothly. Your clothes were dirty from the bus. As for bringing you here... His expression darkened. The men who were watching you work for Dmitry Sokolov. Do you know what happens to women who catch Sokolov's attention? I didn't answer, but the tight knot in my stomach told me I could guess. They disappear, Alexander continued. Some end up in other countries, some are never found at all. He leaned closer. So yes, I brought you here. And here you will stay until I am certain you are no longer of interest to him. You can't keep me prisoner. Prisoner? He looked almost offended. Look around you, Eliza. Does this look like a prison? A gilded cage is still a cage. He laughed then, the sound surprisingly warm in the tense atmosphere. You have spirit. Good, you'll need it. He stood abruptly. Breakfast will be ready soon. There are clothes in the closet that should fit you. Join me downstairs when you're ready. He turned to leave, and desperation clawed at me. Wait, please, I have patience. Responsibilities. People will notice if I don't show up for my shift. Alexander paused at the door. Your hospital has been informed that you've taken emergency leave for a family matter. Your apartment is being watched. Your bills will be paid. He glanced back at me. Everything has been taken care of. For how long? I asked, my voice small. For as long as necessary. His gaze traveled over me with an intensity that made my skin prickle, with something I refused to acknowledge as anything but fear. You're safe here, Eliza. That's all that matters now. As he moved to close the door, I heard him murmur something to the guard outside. Just one word, but it carried clearly in the quiet room. Mine. The door shut with a soft click, leaving me alone in the luxurious prison. My fingers clutched the sheets as I tried to process what had happened, what was still happening. A mafia boss had saved me from what he claimed was an attempted abduction, only to bring me to his mansion and declare ownership of me. My life had been neatly rearranged without my consent, my freedom taken under the guise of protection. I slid from the bed and moved to the window, pulling back the heavy curtain. Sunlight flooded the room, momentarily blinding me. When my vision cleared, I gasped. The mansion sat on what appeared to be a private estate, with manicured gardens stretching toward a dense forest. In the distance, I could see the glitter of the city skyline. Close enough to taunt me with its proximity, far enough to make escape on foot impossible. Movement below caught my eye. 2 men with guns visible at their hips patrolled the grounds, not just keeping others out, I realized, keeping me in. I let the curtain fall back into place and sank to the floor, wrapping my arms around my knees. Think, Eliza. Think. There had to be a way out of this situation. I'd faced difficult circumstances before. Growing up in foster care after my parents' accident, working my way through medical school, surviving the grueling years of residency, I'd always found a solution, a way forward. But I'd never faced someone like Alexander Volkov. I pushed myself up and made my way to the attached bathroom, another shock of luxury with its marble floors and massive shower. I caught my reflection in the mirror, pale face, dark circles under my eyes, long black hair tangled from sleep. I looked exactly like what I was. A woman completely out of her depth, but beneath the fear and confusion, something else flickered. Determination. I was a trauma surgeon, I dealt with life and death situations every day. I remained calm when others panicked. I found solutions when there seemed to be none. I would find a way out of this too. For now, though, I needed information. And to get information, I needed to play along. I splashed water on my face and squared my shoulders. I would meet Alexander for breakfast. I would learn the layout of this place, understand the routines, identify potential allies. I would be patient and observant. And then, when the moment was right, I would escape. I opened the closet and gasped. Rows of clothing, dresses, pants, blouses, all still with tags from high-end designers, all exactly my size. This hadn't been prepared overnight. Alexander had been planning this, planning for me, for some time. The realization sent another wave of dread through me. Just how long had he been watching me? And why? What made me special enough to warrant this level of attention from one of the most dangerous men in the city? I chose the most modest outfit I could find. Black pants and a simple blue blouse, and slipped it on, trying not to think about how perfectly it fit. How someone had studied my body enough to know exactly what would suit me. As I dressed, my mind raced with questions. Why would Sokolov's men be after me? I was nobody, just an overworked ER doctor with student debt and a tiny apartment. I had no connections to the criminal world, no valuable information, nothing worth kidnapping me for. Unless... A terrible thought struck me. Unless it wasn't me they wanted. Unless they wanted to get to Alexander through me. But that would mean he and I were connected somehow. And we weren't. We couldn't be. I would have remembered meeting someone like him. I finished dressing and took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. As I opened the bedroom door, I found the same guard from earlier standing outside. "Mr. Volkov is waiting in the dining room," he said, gesturing for me to follow him. With no other choice, I did. The dining room was as grand as I expected, with a table that could easily seat 20 people, though only 2 places were set. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating crystal glasses and silver cutlery. Alexander stood as I entered, watching me with those unnerving blue eyes. "Good morning, Eliza. I trust you slept well once you were settled." His voice was smooth, controlled, revealing nothing of his thoughts. "As well as one can sleep after being drugged and kidnapped," I replied, unable to keep the bitterness from my tone. A flicker of amusement crossed his face. "Please sit." He gestured to the chair across from his own, closer than I would have liked. I approached cautiously, taking in more details about the man who held my freedom in his hands. In the daylight, I could see the precision of his suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored to his broad shoulders and lean frame. A platinum watch gleamed at his wrist. His dark hair was styled impeccably, and his face, while undeniably handsome, held a hardness around the eyes that spoke of a man who had seen and done terrible things. As I sat, a server appeared silently with coffee and plates of food, eggs, pastries, fruit arranged artfully. My stomach growled traitorously, reminding me that I hadn't eaten since a hasty sandwich during my shift the previous day. "Eat," Alexander said, noticing my hesitation. "It's not poisoned, I assure you. Forgive me if I don't take the word of a man who drugged me last night." He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "That was unfortunate but necessary. You were panicking." Of course I was panicking. Strange men boarded the bus and... "My men removed you from danger," he interrupted, his voice hardening slightly. "Would you prefer I had let Sokolov's people take you? I assure you, their hospitality would be significantly less comfortable than mine." I fell silent, picking up my fork and taking a small bite of the eggs, which were, annoyingly, perfectly cooked. "Why would Sokolov want me?" I finally asked. "I'm nobody to people like you." Alexander studied me over the rim of his coffee cup. "That's what I intend to find out. You don't know?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "I know Sokolov has been watching you for at least 2 weeks. My people noticed his surveillance on your apartment building, your hospital." He set down his cup with precise movements. "Initially, I thought it might be related to one of his associates you treated in the ER 3 months ago. Gunshot wound to the shoulder." I remembered the patient, a nervous young man with a bullet wound he claimed came from a hunting accident, though the caliber and angle made that highly unlikely. Hospital policy was to report all gunshot wounds to the police. But by the time they arrived, the man had disappeared. But that doesn't explain the level of interest, Alexander continued. Sokolov doesn't commit resources to something unless the potential reward is significant. I'm an ER doctor. I make barely enough to cover my student loans. I don't have information or connections or whatever it is you people value. His eyebrow raised slightly at you people, but he didn't comment on it. Everyone has value, Eliza. Some just don't recognize it in themselves. A chill ran through me at his words. At the way his eyes seemed to see through me, I looked down at my plate, struggling to maintain my composure. How long do you intend to keep me here? Until I'm certain you're safe. And who decides that? You? Yes. The single word carried such certainty, such finality, that arguing seemed pointless. I changed tactics. My patients need me. The hospital has other doctors. My life is there. My work. Your work will be waiting when this is resolved, he cut in. Your safety is the priority now. My safety, I repeated, unable to keep the skepticism from my voice. Why do you care about my safety? We're strangers. Alexander's expression shifted subtly, something I couldn't read flickering in his eyes. Not entirely. My heart skipped. What does that mean? He stood suddenly, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. I have business to attend to. Yuri will show you around the grounds. The estate is secure, but do not attempt to leave. It would be unwise. Just like that, the conversation was over. He strode from the room without looking back, leaving me with more questions than answers. Not entirely strangers? What did that mean? Had we met before? I searched my memory but found nothing. The guard from earlier, Yuri apparently, appeared in the doorway. When you're finished, I'll show you the house. I pushed away my plate, appetite gone. I'm finished. The tour was both impressive and intimidating. The mansion was even larger than I'd initially thought. 3 stories with countless rooms, a library filled with leather-bound volumes, a conservatory, even a small movie theater. Most doors were unlocked, giving an illusion of freedom, but I noted the ones that remained closed to me, mentally mapping the layout. The grounds were equally vast. Gardens, a pool, tennis courts. All surrounded by a high stone wall topped with what I suspected was state-of-the-art security. Men like Yuri patrolled at regular intervals. No matter which window I looked out of, I could spot at least one guard. There would be no easy escape. Mr. Volkov has instructed that you have freedom of the house and grounds, Yuri explained as we completed the tour. If you need anything, there are staff available. If you wish to speak with Mr. Volkov, tell any staff member, and they will relay the message. And if I wish to leave? Yuri's expression didn't change. Mr. Volkov has made his position on that clear. So I am a prisoner. Mr. Volkov prefers protected guest. I laughed bitterly. I'm sure he does. Yuri left me in a sunroom overlooking the gardens, and I sank into a comfortable chair, finally alone with my thoughts. The situation felt surreal, like I'd somehow fallen into someone else's life, someone else's story. Less than 24 hours ago, I'd been Dr. Chen, treating patients in the ER. Now I was, what? A captive? A guest? A pawn in some game between rival criminals? The rest of the day passed in a strange haze. I explored the house further, tested boundaries, observed routines. Staff appeared and disappeared silently, always watching but never engaging beyond what was necessary. Meals were served with the same elegant precision as breakfast. I found books in the library to occupy my mind, but couldn't focus on the words. Night fell, and I returned to my room, where I found fresh nightclothes laid out on the bed. I showered in the luxurious bathroom, the hot water doing little to ease the tension in my muscles. As I dried off, I caught sight of myself in the mirror again. The woman looking back at me seemed different somehow, still frightened, still confused, but with a hardening resolve in her eyes. I was pulling on the silk nightgown when a knock came at the door. My heart jumped to my throat. Who is it? Alexander. His voice was unmistakable even through the door. I hesitated, then wrapped a robe around myself before opening the door. He stood in the hallway, still in his suit despite the late hour. though his tie was gone and the top button of his shirt undone. The small concession to comfort somehow made him seem more human, more approachable, which I immediately recognized as dangerous thinking. "May I come in?" he asked, oddly formal for a man who had brought me to this room unconscious the night before. I stepped aside, allowing him to enter while maintaining distance between us. He moved to the window, looking out at the night sky for a moment, before turning back to me. "I have information," he said without preamble, "about why Sokolov is interested in you." My pulse quickened. "Tell me." "Your father." 2 words, and my world tilted again. "My father died when I was 10, car accident with my mother." Alexander shook his head slightly. "James Chen was not your biological father." The statement hung in the air between us, absurd, and yet delivered with such certainty that doubt crept in. That's not possible. You're lying." "I have no reason to lie to you, Eliza." His voice was gentle now, almost sympathetic. "Your mother had a relationship before she met James. The man's name was Viktor Petrov. He was my mentor, and Sokolov's greatest enemy." I sank onto the edge of the bed, my legs suddenly unable to support me. No, that can't be right. My mother would have told me. There would have been something, some indication. Your mother protected you. She never told Victor about you. When she met James, she let everyone believe you were his daughter. Alexander moved closer, not touching me but near enough that I could feel his presence like a physical force. Victor discovered the truth shortly before his death 15 years ago. He told only me, made me promise to watch over you from a distance. 15 years? My voice was barely a whisper. "You've been watching me for 15 years? "Not constantly," he said, as if that made it better. "From time to time, making sure you were safe, that your path remained your own. But now Sokolov knows." I was putting the pieces together, horror growing with each connection. "How?" "Victor's longtime housekeeper died last month. She had kept journals, mentioned your mother, mentioned a child." Alexander's face darkened. "Sokolov's people found them before mine could. And he wants me because, what? Revenge against a dead man? Leverage against you? Both, perhaps. Victor took everything from Sokolov 20 years ago. His territory, his reputation, even the woman he claimed to love. Sokolov spent years rebuilding, and now he controls nearly as much of the city as I do." His eyes fixed on mine. If he discovered that Victor had a daughter, he would see it as an opportunity for the ultimate vengeance. My head spun with the implications. A father I never knew. A criminal legacy I never asked for. Enemies I'd done nothing to make. This can't be happening. "I'm sorry, Eliza. Truly." And for a moment, he did look sorry. "I had hoped to keep you separate from all this. To honor my promise to Victor without disrupting your life." "Your promise?" Something clicked into place. "That's why you said we weren't entirely strangers. You've been..." "What? My secret guardian angel?" I couldn't keep the bitter sarcasm from my voice. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Hardly an angel. How do I know you're telling me the truth about any of this?" He reached into his jacket and withdrew a photograph, offering it to me. I took it with trembling fingers. It showed a much younger version of my mother, laughing beside a tall man with dark hair and familiar eyes. My eyes. They stood on a beach somewhere, looking happy. In love. "Where did you get this?" "Victor kept it. Always." I stared at the photo, at the face of the man who was supposedly my biological father. A man who had lived and died without me ever knowing him. A man whose legacy now threatened my life. "I still don't understand why you brought me here," I said finally. "If you've been watching over me for years without interfering, why now? Why not just warn me? Help me leave town? Why?" I gestured around the room, at my captivity, however luxurious. Alexander moved closer, and this time he did touch me, just the lightest brush of fingers against my cheek. But it sent an inexplicable shiver through me. "Because I made another promise, Eliza. One I made to myself when I realized Sokolov had discovered your existence." "What promise?" His eyes locked with mine, intense and unwavering, "that I would keep you safe, whatever the cost." The way he said it, with such conviction, such certainty, made me believe him, despite every instinct screaming that this man was dangerous, that his world was dangerous, that I needed to get as far away from him as possible. "And what's the cost to me?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "My freedom? My life?" He withdrew his hand, and I tried to ignore the strange sense of loss that followed. "Your patience. For now." Before I could respond, he turned and walked to the door. "Rest. We'll talk more tomorrow. Alexander." His name felt strange on my lips. He paused, looking back at me. "If what you're saying is true, if Sokolov is after me because of who my father was, then I'm not just in danger now. I'll always be in danger. This doesn't end with a few days of protection in your mansion." Something flickered in his expression. Approval, perhaps, that I'd understood the situation so quickly. "We'll find a solution, Eliza, together." Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him, leaving me alone with a photograph of strangers who had shaped my destiny without my knowledge or consent. A mother who had kept secrets, a father I never knew, and now a man who claimed the right to protect me because of promises made to ghosts. I placed the photo on the nightstand and curled up on the bed, wrapping my arms around myself as if I could hold the pieces of my fractured reality together. Sleep seemed impossible, but exhaustion eventually pulled me under, into dreams of running through endless corridors, always pursued, never escaping. Block 3. Morning arrived with harsh clarity, sunlight streaming through a gap in the curtains I'd forgotten to close completely. I blinked away sleep, momentarily disoriented until memories of the previous day came rushing back. The mansion. Alexander. The photograph that had turned my understanding of myself inside out. I reached for it on the nightstand, studying the faces more carefully in the light of day. My mother looked so young, so carefree, a version of her I barely remembered. And the man beside her, I searched his features for traces of myself. The shape of the eyes, perhaps. The curve of the jawline. It was strange to suddenly see yourself in a stranger's face. Viktor Petrov, my biological father, a criminal. A man powerful enough that his enemies would target his daughter 15 years after his death. I set the photo down and rose from bed, my body aching from tension. After showering and dressing in clothes I still couldn't think of as mine, I made my way downstairs, determined to find answers that made sense of this new reality. The house was quiet, though staff moved about with practiced efficiency, their eyes always sliding past me as if trained not to stare. I asked one of them, a young woman arranging flowers, where Alexander was. "Mr. Volkov had business in the city, Dr. Chen," she replied. "He left early this morning." Of course he had. Drop a bombshell about my parentage, then disappear. Did he say when he would return? "No, ma'am. But he asked that you make yourself comfortable. Anything you need, just ask. Comfortable. As if that were possible." I wandered through the house, eventually finding myself in the library again. Unlike yesterday's aimless exploration, today I had purpose. If Viktor Petrov had been important enough in the criminal world to have enemies still seeking revenge, there might be information about him here. The library was extensive, with books in multiple languages lining the walls from floor to ceiling. I scanned the shelves, not entirely sure what I was looking for, until I reached a section that seemed different. Older books, leather-bound journals, photo albums, personal history, not literature. One album in particular caught my attention, a simple black cover with no markings. I pulled it from the shelf and opened it, my breath catching as faces looked back at me. Younger versions of Alexander, and beside him, the man from the photo, Viktor, my father. I carried the album to a nearby chair and began turning pages, absorbed in this glimpse of a world I'd never known existed. Photos spanning years, men in suits at restaurants, on boats, at what appeared to be business meetings, but which I now understood had nothing to do with legitimate business. Viktor aged through the pages, his dark hair graying at the temples, the lines around his eyes deepening, but his stance always confident, authoritative, and always nearby. Alexander, growing from a serious young man into the imposing figure I now knew, his loyalty to Viktor evident in every image. He was like a father to me. I startled, nearly dropping the album. Alexander stood in the doorway, watching me with an unreadable expression. I hadn't heard him return, hadn't heard him approach. I didn't mean to pry, I said, though that was exactly what I'd been doing. Yes, you did. He entered the room fully, removing his suit jacket and draping it over a chair. But I don't mind. You have a right to know about him. Tell me then, I challenged, holding up the album. Tell me about the criminal who apparently fathered me, the man whose legacy has now stolen my life from me. Alexander sat across from me, loosening his tie with one hand. Victor was more than his business, Eliza. He was brilliant, cultured, loyal to those who earned his trust. He built an empire from nothing after coming to this country with empty pockets. An empire of what? Drugs? Weapons? Extortion? Protection, Alexander countered smoothly. Structure in a world that lacks it. Yes, some of our business operates outside conventional law. But Victor had principles. Lines he wouldn't cross. People under his protection lived better, safer lives than they would have otherwise. Forgive me if I don't romanticize organized crime, I said dryly. My mother left him for a reason. Something flickered in Alexander's eyes. She left because she discovered she was pregnant. She wanted a different life for you, a normal life. Victor respected that choice, even when he learned about you years later. He watched from a distance, made sure you had opportunities. Did you never wonder how you received that scholarship for medical school? I stared at him, a cold realization washing over me. The mysterious scholarship that had appeared just when I'd been about to give up my dream of becoming a doctor. The benefactor who wished to remain anonymous. That was him? Alexander nodded. His last gift to you. He died 3 months later. I closed the album, suddenly unable to look at the faces anymore. So my entire life has been built on blood money. Everything I've worked for, everything I've achieved, everything you've achieved has been through your own intelligence and determination. He interrupted firmly. The money opened a door. You walked through it on your own merit. I wanted to argue, to reject this connection to a world I'd never chosen, but the evidence of Victor's influence on my life was becoming undeniable. And now his enemies want to use me, or hurt me, because of a connection I never even knew about. Yes. Alexander leaned forward, his expression intense, which is why you must stay here, where I can protect you. For how long? I demanded. Forever? Am I supposed to live the rest of my life in a gilded cage because of a father I never met? Until we eliminate the threat. The casual way he said, eliminate, sent a chill through me. A stark reminder of exactly who this man was, and what he was capable of, and how do you plan to do that? Sokolov is cautious, protected, but not infallible. Alexander's voice hardened. He's made his move against you. Now I'll make mine against him. You're talking about killing him. I said it plainly, refusing to dance around the reality. I'm talking about ensuring your safety by whatever means necessary. I won't have blood on my hands, I said fiercely. Not even his. There must be another way. Alexander studied me, something like admiration flickering in his eyes. Your father would be proud of your principles. He had a similar distaste for unnecessary violence. He was a criminal, I reminded him. You all are. The world isn't as black and white as you'd like it to be, Eliza. He stood, moving to a cabinet near the window and withdrawing a crystal decanter and 2 glasses. Victor understood that better than most. He operated in the gray areas because that's where real power exists, in the spaces between what's allowed and what's possible. He poured amber liquid into both glasses, offering one to me. I shook my head. It's barely noon. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Time is a construct. He set the rejected glass aside and took a sip from his own. Tell me what you want, Eliza. If you could define a solution to this situation, what would it be? The question caught me off guard. Since waking up in this mansion, no one had asked what I wanted. I want my life back. I want to return to my apartment, my job. I want to pretend none of this ever happened. That's not possible. Sokolov knows who you are now. That can't be undone. Then I want to leave. Start over somewhere new, where neither of you can find me. Alexander shook his head. He has connections across the country, across the world. And without my protection, you wouldn't last a week. Frustration bubbled up inside me. So those are my only options? Stay here as your prisoner indefinitely? Or die at Sokolov's hands? Not prisoner, he corrected softly. Never that. What then? I demanded, standing to face him directly. What am I to you, Alexander? A obligation? A promise to be kept? A possession? He set down his glass and stepped closer, his proximity making my heart race in a way I refused to examine. You are under my protection, he said, his voice low. But you're not a prisoner, Eliza. You never will be. Fine words from a man who won't let me leave, I countered, refusing to back away despite the intensity of his gaze. I won't let you walk into danger, he corrected. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing. We were close now. Too close. I could smell his cologne, see the faint scar near his temple that was usually hidden by his hair. For a moment, something electric seemed to pass between us. A tension that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with something I wasn't ready to acknowledge. A discreet knock at the door broke the moment. Yuri stood in the doorway, his expression grim. Sir, there's a situation that requires your attention. Alexander's demeanor shifted instantly, the almost softness vanishing behind a mask of cold authority. Excuse me, Eliza. We'll continue this discussion later. He followed Yuri from the room without looking back, leaving me breathless and confused. I sank back into my chair, my mind racing. What had just happened between us? And why did I feel disappointed that it had been interrupted? No, I couldn't think like that. Stockholm Syndrome was real, and I refused to become a victim of it. Alexander might be handsome, charismatic, even occasionally kind, but he was still the man who had taken my freedom. Still a criminal who lived by his own rules. Outside the law I had always respected. I returned the photo album to its shelf and left the library, needing movement, air, anything to clear my head. I made my way outside to the gardens, grateful for the spring sunshine and the illusion of freedom the open space provided, though I remained acutely aware of the guards patrolling the perimeter. As I walked, I tried to make sense of everything I'd learned. My biological father was a crime boss. His protege was now my protector. His enemy wanted to use me for revenge. My entire identity had been built on a lie. Not malicious, perhaps, but a lie nonetheless. Who was Eliza Chen, if not the daughter of James and Grace Chen? If not the woman who had worked so hard to succeed on her own merits, only to discover that unseen hands had been smoothing her path? If not the doctor dedicated to saving lives, now caught in a world where lives were taken with calculated precision? I found a stone bench beside a flowering cherry tree and sat, watching petals drift in the gentle breeze. Despite the beauty surrounding me, despair began to creep in. There seemed no way out of this situation that didn't end in violence or captivity. My life as I knew it was over. Dr. Chen? A woman's voice pulled me from my thoughts. I looked up to see an elegant older woman approaching, her silver hair swept into a chignon, her posture regal despite her age. I thought I might find you out here. I often came to this spot when I needed to think too. I stood, uncertain. I'm sorry. I don't think we've met. Irina Petrova. She offered her hand, which I took automatically. I was Victor's sister, your aunt, I suppose, though I never expected to have the chance to claim that title. Another shock. Another piece of the puzzle I never knew existed. You live here? In the guest house. She indicated somewhere beyond the rose garden. Alexander has always ensured I wanted for nothing after my brother's death. He told me about you last night. And did you know? I asked, searching her face, which, now that she mentioned it, did bear some resemblance to the man in the photos. About me? Before now? Irina shook her head, sitting on the bench and gesturing for me to join her. Victor kept you a secret even from me, though we were close. He feared that knowledge of your existence would put you in danger. It seems he was right to worry, but not right enough to stay away from criminal activities that created those dangers in the first place, I couldn't help adding. A sad smile touched Irina's lips. My brother was a complicated man, Eliza. The path he chose was set long before he met your mother. By the time he fell in love with her, it was too late to change course. Why are you telling me this? Because I see you struggling to reconcile who you thought you were with who you've discovered you are. Her eyes, sharp despite her age, studied me carefully. You are still you, Eliza. Your father's blood doesn't define you any more than your achievements do. We are all more than our parentage or our accomplishments. Did you know Alexander well before all this? I asked, curious about this woman who had unexpectedly entered my life, this aunt I never knew I had. Since he was a boy, Irina replied, her gaze drifting to the gardens as if looking into the past. His father worked for Victor. When both his parents died in a fire, a retaliation from rivals, Victor took him in, raised him as a son. She turned back to me. Alexander was always serious, always watching, learning. Victor saw something in him from the beginning, a natural talent for strategy, for leadership, but also loyalty. Unwavering loyalty, to a fault it seems, I murmured, thinking of how Alexander's promise to a dead man had led to my current situation. Irina's lips curved in a knowing smile. Perhaps. But there are worse qualities in a man. She reached out, briefly touching my hand. He will protect you, Eliza. Of that, I have no doubt. I don't want protection. I want my life back. And what life was that? She asked gently. Working endless hours at the hospital. Coming home to an empty apartment. No family. Few friends. Because you never allowed yourself to form deep connections. I stiffened. You don't know me. I know more than you might think. Alexander has kept me informed about you over the years. She held up a hand as I started to protest. Not in a way that invaded your privacy. Just updates. That you were well. That you had become a doctor. That you were excelling in your career. Her expression softened. I would look at the occasional photograph he showed me and try to see my brother in you. Sometimes I could. In the determined set of your jaw. The intelligence in your eyes. I didn't know how to respond to that, to the idea that I had been watched, discussed, analyzed by people I never knew existed, that pieces of my identity had been parceled out and examined like artifacts. This is all overwhelming, I admitted. Of course it is. Irina stood, smoothing her impeccable linen pants. Come have tea with me tomorrow, in my cottage. It might be good for you to speak with someone who isn't directly involved in your current predicament. I nodded, grateful for the invitation, even as I wondered whether Alexander would permit such a visit. As if reading my thoughts, Irina smiled again. Don't worry about Alexander. He respects me enough not to interfere. As she walked away, her posture still elegant despite her years, I felt a strange mixture of emotions, confusion certainly, at this new connection to a past I never knew, but also an unexpected sense of, not quite comfort, but something close to it. The possibility that in this strange new world I'd been thrust into, I might not be entirely alone. I remained in the garden until the afternoon light began to fade, lost in thought, barely noticing as guards changed shifts around the perimeter. When I finally returned to the house, I found Alexander in what appeared to be his office, a masculine space with dark wood paneling and walls of books. He stood at a window, his back to the door, speaking in rapid Russian on his phone. He sensed my presence, turning slightly, then gestured for me to enter as he concluded his call. You met Irina, he said, setting his phone on the desk. Yes. I stepped into the room but remained near the door. She invited me to tea tomorrow. Good. She will be a steadying influence, perhaps. He studied me, something unreadable in his expression. Did she tell you about Victor? A little. And about you. A raised eyebrow. Should I be concerned? She said you were raised by my father after your parents died. I moved further into the room, drawn by curiosity despite my reservations. That he treated you like a son. He was more of a father to me than my own ever was. Alexander's voice held a rare softness when he spoke of Victor. He taught me everything, not just about business, but about life, about honor, in our own way. I almost laughed at that. Honor among thieves? Mock it if you wish, but yes. There are codes, rules, lines that aren't crossed. He gestured to a chair, and after a moment's hesitation, I sat. Victor lived by those rules, so do I. And Sokolov doesn't, I guessed. Alexander's expression darkened. Sokolov believes power is its own justification, that the strong can do whatever they wish to the weak. Victor opposed that philosophy. It was the heart of their conflict, beyond territory or profit. A moral disagreement between immoral men, I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. To my surprise, Alexander smiled slightly. Your directness is refreshing, Eliza. Most people are too afraid to speak to me that way. Fear has never been a good basis for honest conversation. No. His gaze held mine. It isn't. A strange moment passed between us. Acknowledgement, perhaps, that despite the extraordinary circumstances, we were having a genuine exchange. I broke eye contact first, uncomfortable with the unexpected connection. I received information today, he said, his tone shifting to something more businesslike. Sokolov has put out inquiries about you, offering significant rewards for your location. My stomach clenched. Then he knows I'm missing. He knows you're not at your apartment or the hospital. He doesn't know you're with me. Not yet. But he'll figure it out eventually, yes. Alexander moved to a sideboard, pouring water from a crystal decanter. He offered me a glass, which I accepted this time, my throat suddenly dry. Which means we need to accelerate our plans. What plans? I asked, suddenly wary. You haven't shared any plans with me. He took a seat behind his desk, his posture somehow both relaxed and alert. I've been gathering information, assessing options. Sokolov is well protected, but not invulnerable. Every man has weaknesses. You're still talking about killing him. It wasn't a question. I'm talking about eliminating a threat to your life, he corrected, as if the distinction mattered. But there may be alternatives. His position has been unstable recently. There are whispers of dissatisfaction among his lieutenants. If properly exploited, internal conflict could remove him without direct intervention. And you'd take over his territory, I guessed. A slight shrug. Balance would be maintained. The city would be more stable. This is insane, I said, setting down my glass with more force than intended. You're discussing a potential gang war like it's a business merger. People could die. People will die regardless, Eliza. The only question is which people. His voice was calm, matter of fact. This isn't the world you've known, with its rules and procedures. This is a world of power and consequence, of action and reaction. A world I want no part of, I insisted. Yet here you are. His eyes held mine, challenging. You can deny your connection to this world, but it exists regardless. The question now is how you choose to navigate it. I don't have a choice. You've made all my choices for me. Not all, he said quietly. Never all. I stood abruptly, needing distance from him, from this conversation that was making me question boundaries I'd always thought fixed and clear. I can't do this right now. I can't discuss people's lives, deaths, like they're chess pieces. Alexander remained seated, watching me with that unnerving intensity. Tomorrow, then, after you've had time to process. But this conversation cannot be delayed indefinitely, Eliza. Sokolov won't wait while you come to terms with reality. My reality, until 2 days ago, was saving lives in the ER, not deciding who deserves to die. No one said anything about deserving. His voice had an edge now. This isn't about justice. It's about survival. I turned away, unable to look at him anymore. I need some air. Of course. He made no move to stop me. But Eliza... I paused at the door, not looking back. Don't go beyond the gardens. The woods are patrolled, but not as secure. A reminder of my captivity, however gilded. I left without acknowledging his warning, making my way back outside even as twilight deepened around the estate. The gardens were different at this hour. Shadows lengthening, flowers closing, the air cooling with the promise of night. I found a different bench, this one near a small fountain, whose gentle splashing provided a soothing counterpoint to my chaotic thoughts. How had my life transformed so completely in less than 48 hours? From dedicated doctor to, what? Pawn in a power struggle between crime lords? Daughter of a man I never knew? Prisoner of a man who claimed to protect me while casually discussing murder? And the most troubling question, why did I feel drawn to Alexander despite everything, despite knowing what he was, what he'd done? What he was capable of doing. There was a magnetism to him that went beyond his obvious physical appeal. A certainty, a presence that commanded attention. When he spoke, I believed him, even when I didn't want to. Stockholm Syndrome, I reminded myself again. A psychological response to captivity. Nothing more. The snap of a twig brought me out of my thoughts. I looked up, expecting to see one of the guards on their rounds. Instead, I saw a man I didn't recognize. Not one of Alexander's staff or security. He wore dark clothes, his face partially obscured by the growing darkness. I stood quickly, fear spiking through me. "Who are you?" He moved forward with surprising speed, and before I could scream or run, he'd grab my arm. "Dr. Chen, you need to come with me, now. Let go of me." I struggled against his grip, panic rising. "Mr. Sokolov wants to speak with you," he said, his voice low and urgent. "If you come quietly, no one needs to get hurt. Sokolov." The name sent ice through my veins. "How did you get in here?" "The old lady's cottage. Security is lighter there." He pulled me toward the woods, his grip bruising. "Move. We don't have much time." Irina. Had they hurt her? The thought spurred me to action. I stopped fighting and instead went completely limp, dropping my full weight to the ground. The unexpected move caught him off guard, loosening his grip just enough for me to wrench my arm free. I scrambled backwards, drawing breath to scream for help. Before I could, the night erupted with sound, a single gunshot, so close it seemed to vibrate in my chest. The man jerked, a look of surprise crossing his face before he crumpled to the ground. I turned to see Alexander standing 20 feet away, a gun still raised in his hand. Behind him, guards converged from multiple directions. His face was a mask of cold fury as he approached, tucking the weapon into his jacket. "Are you hurt?" His voice was controlled, but tension radiated from him. I shook my head, unable to speak, my eyes fixed on the man bleeding out on the manicured lawn. One of Alexander's guards knelt beside the body, checking for signs of life, then shook his head. Dead. The man was dead, killed in front of me, because of me. "Get her inside," Alexander ordered, and strong hands gripped my shoulders, guiding me back toward the house. I moved in a daze, shock numbing my senses. Inside, someone pressed a glass into my hands, brandy, from the smell. I drank without thinking, the burn of alcohol bringing me back to awareness. Alexander stood across the room, issuing rapid-fire orders to his men. His suit was immaculate, his demeanor composed, as if he hadn't just killed a man less than 5 minutes ago. "Irina," I managed to say. "He mentioned Irina's cottage. Is she—" "She's fine," Alexander assured me, crossing the room to stand before me. "They used her garden to access the property, but didn't enter her home. She's being moved to the main house tonight as a precaution." Relief washed through me, followed immediately by renewed horror at what had just happened. "You killed him." "Yes." No apology, no justification, just acknowledgement of the act. "He was going to take me to Sokolov." "Yes." I looked up at him, at the man who had just taken a life to prevent mine from being taken. "Thank you." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, that I would thank him for killing, but it hadn't been abstract then, hypothetical. It had been immediate, visceral. Him or me. "I told you I would protect you," he said simply. I meant it. And in that moment, surrounded by the aftermath of violence, I believed him completely. Whatever else Alexander Volkov was, criminal, kidnapper, killer, he was also, undeniably, my protector. And in this new world I'd been thrust into, that might be the only thing keeping me alive. That night, sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the man falling, the look of surprise on his face as life left him. I kept replaying the moment, wondering what would have happened if Alexander hadn't appeared when he did. Where would I be now? In Sokolov's hands? Already dead? By dawn I'd given up on rest. I showered and dressed mechanically, choosing practical clothes without really seeing them. When I emerged from my room, I found a guard I didn't recognize standing outside my door, younger than Yuri, but with the same watchful eyes. "Dr. Chen." He nodded respectfully. "Mr. Volkov asked me to escort you today. Security has been increased." I didn't argue. After last night, The need for protection no longer seemed theoretical. I followed him downstairs to the dining room, where I found not just Alexander, but Irina as well, engaged in quiet conversation over coffee. They both looked up as I entered, concern evident in their expressions. I must have looked as exhausted as I felt. "Eliza." Irina rose to greet me, taking my hands in hers. "How are you, my dear?" "I'm fine." I lied automatically, the doctor's response to personal inquiry. Alexander didn't speak, but pulled out the chair beside his. A silent invitation. I sat, allowing a server to pour coffee I wasn't sure I could stomach. "You haven't slept," Alexander observed, his voice low. No. I saw no point in denying it. "It's normal," he said, surprising me. "The first time you witness violence, death, it stays with you." I looked at him, truly looked at him, noticing the shadows beneath his own eyes. He hadn't slept either. "Does it get easier?" "Yes." A simple answer, but his eyes conveyed more, and that's its own kind of burden. Something in his honesty, in the lack of platitudes, touched me unexpectedly. He wasn't trying to comfort me with lies or minimize what had happened. He was acknowledging the weight of it, both the experience itself and what it meant to become accustomed to such things. "Sokolov knows I'm here now," I said, changing the subject. "Yes," Alexander confirmed. "The attempt last night makes that clear." "He'll try again." "Yes." "What happens now?" Alexander exchanged a glance with Irina, some unspoken communication passing between them. "Now we accelerate our timeline. Sokolov has shown his hand. We can no longer wait for the perfect opportunity." "What does that mean exactly?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. "It means," Irina answered for him, "that difficult decisions must be made, and quickly, about Sokolov." "Yes." Alexander's gaze was steady. "I told you before. There are ways to remove him without direct confrontation, internal dissension among his ranks, properly exploited. It would be cleaner, safer. But it would take time, which we now lack. So you're going to kill him." The words hung in the air between us. "I'm going to eliminate the threat to your life," he said, echoing his words from yesterday, "by whatever means necessary." After what had happened in the garden, I couldn't find the moral outrage I'd felt before. The lines between right and wrong, once so clear to me, had begun to blur. When? Tonight. We've received information about a meeting at one of his clubs, a rare opportunity where his security will be lighter than usual. My hand trembled as I lifted my coffee cup. "And after? What happens to me after he's gone?" "You'll be safe," Alexander said, as if that answered everything. "But will I be free?" I pressed. "Will I be able to return to my life?" Something flickered in his expression. "Your old life is gone, Eliza. You must understand that. Even with Sokolov removed, there will always be others who would use you to get to me, who would see Victor's daughter as leverage or a target. So I remain your prisoner indefinitely." I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "Not prisoner," he corrected, an edge entering his tone. "Never that." "What then?" "What am I to you, Alexander?" I demanded, the question I'd asked before, but never received a clear answer to. Irina cleared her throat delicately. "Perhaps I should give you two some privacy." "No," Alexander said, his eyes still fixed on mine. "Stay, Irina. Eliza deserves complete honesty, and you can provide context I cannot." He set down his coffee cup with careful precision. "When Victor told me about you 15 years ago, he made me promise two things. First, to watch over you from a distance, ensuring your safety without interfering in your life. Second," he hesitated, something I'd rarely seen him do, "if the day ever came when you were drawn into our world, when distance was no longer possible, I was to protect you as he would have, as family." "Family," I repeated, trying to understand. "Victor and I were not related by blood," Alexander continued, "but he was the only father I knew." "Which makes you like a sister to you?" I asked, confused by the intensity in his gaze, which suggested something very different from brotherly concern. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "No, Eliza, not a sister. Irina's soft laugh broke the tension. My brother had old-fashioned values, despite his occupation. When he discovered he had a daughter, he began to think of succession, of legacy. Her eyes, so like Victor's in the photographs, held mine. He intended for you to be brought into the family eventually, when the time was right, and he intended for you to be connected to Alexander in a way that would secure both your position and his. Understanding dawned slowly, incredulously. Are you saying he wanted us to marry? An arrangement, Alexander clarified. A union that would solidify our positions and protect you through formal association with me. In our world, the wife of Alexander Volkov would be untouchable. I sat back, stunned. That's medieval. It's practical, Irina countered gently. In a world where power and protection come through connection, through family. And you've been what? Waiting to claim your prize? I directed my shock and anger at Alexander. Watching me all these years, knowing I was meant for you? No. His denial was firm. I never intended to act on Victor's wishes. I respected his desire for you to have a normal life, free from our world. I kept my distance, watched over you only enough to ensure your safety. Until Sokolov discovered my existence. Yes. His eyes held mine, unflinching. But even now I make no claim on you, Eliza. No demands. Victor's wishes are not commands from the grave. You are not an object to be passed from father to protege. Then what am I? I asked again, my voice barely audible, his expression softened fractionally. You are a woman I have watched from afar for 15 years. A woman I have admired for her determination, her compassion, her strength. A woman I have come to care for, despite never intending to. The raw honesty in his voice stunned me into silence. I looked to Irina, whose expression held both sympathy and something like approval. Alexander has honored his promise to my brother, she said quietly, but his feelings for you are his own, not an obligation. I've watched him these past 2 days, the way he looks at you when you're not watching. This is not duty, Eliza. This is something else entirely. I stood abruptly, overwhelmed. I need to process this, all of it. Alexander rose as well, ever the gentleman despite the extraordinary conversation. Of course. Take whatever time you need. I left the dining room, my mind racing. The idea that my biological father had essentially arranged a marriage for me from beyond the grave was shocking enough, but Alexander's confession that he had developed genuine feelings for me during his years of distant surveillance was something else entirely. Something both disturbing and, in some corner of my heart, I was reluctant to examine, oddly moving. I found myself in the library again, surrounded by the history of a family I never knew I had, trying to reconcile the fragments of my shattered identity. The doctor, the orphan who wasn't truly an orphan, the daughter of a crime lord, the woman promised to his protege. Hours passed as I sat there, thinking, processing. Occasionally, staff would appear with offers of food or drink, which I declined. The house operated around me, preparations clearly underway for whatever operation Alexander had planned for the evening. Guards changed shifts, phones rang in distant rooms. The business of this strange, dangerous world continued regardless of my personal crisis. It was late afternoon when Irina found me, still in the library, staring out the window at nothing in particular. "You've had quite a lot to absorb," she said, settling into a chair nearby. "In a very short time." "That's an understatement." I turned to her, searching for answers in her familiar, unfamiliar face. "Did you know about Victor's arrangement?" "Not until recently," she admitted. "Alexander told me after he brought you here. But I'm not surprised. It's exactly the kind of solution Victor would devise. Pragmatic, forward-thinking, combining protection with advantage. It's archaic," I argued, treating a daughter like a bargaining chip. "In some ways, yes," Irina conceded. "But Victor wasn't giving you away to a stranger for political alliance or financial gain. He was entrusting you to the one man he believed would always protect you. The one man he trusted completely." She leaned forward slightly. "My brother was many things, Eliza. Not all of them admirable. But he loved deeply, in his own way. He loved your mother enough to let her go when she asked, and he loved you enough to stay away, to give you the normal life she wanted for you. I shook my head, still struggling to accept this version of a man I'd never known. It doesn't matter what his intentions were. I'm not some medieval princess to be betrothed for advantage. I make my own choices. Of course you do. Irina agreed readily. Alexander has made that clear. He has no intention of forcing Victor's wishes upon you. Then why tell me at all? Because you asked what you are to him, she said simply. And he decided you deserved the complete truth, however uncomfortable. I turned back to the window, watching shadows lengthen across the grounds as evening approached. He's going after Sokolov tonight, yes. He could be killed. Yes, she acknowledged again. It's a possibility he accepts, because of a promise to my father. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Because of you, Irina corrected gently. I told you before. What Alexander feels for you goes beyond obligation. He would eliminate this threat to you regardless of any promise to Victor. I didn't know how to respond to that. To the idea that this dangerous, powerful man cared for me enough to risk his life, that beneath the cold exterior and calculated violence was a depth of feeling I hadn't expected. He's leaving soon, Irina said, rising from her chair. If you wish to speak with him before he goes, now would be the time. She left me to my thoughts, which were more tangled than ever. Did I want to see Alexander before he embarked on this dangerous mission? Did I have anything to say to him? Did I even understand my own feelings well enough to articulate them? After several minutes of internal debate, I made my way to Alexander's office, where I'd been told he was making final preparations. The door was partially open, and I could see him inside, speaking quietly with Yuri and several other men I recognized as his senior security. They were reviewing what appeared to be building plans, heads bent together in concentration. I hesitated, suddenly uncertain, but Alexander sensed my presence as he always seemed to. He looked up, our eyes meeting across the room, and something unspoken passed between us. He murmured something to the others, who nodded and filed out past me with respectful nods. When we were alone, I entered the office fully, but remained near the door. Alexander had changed since breakfast, now dressed entirely in black, more tactical than his usual elegant suits. The transformation emphasized the duality of his nature, the cultured businessman and the dangerous enforcer existing in the same body. You're leaving soon, I said, stating the obvious, because I didn't know how to say what I really wanted to. Yes. He studied me carefully, as if memorizing my face. Eliza, about this morning. Don't, I interrupted. I didn't come here to discuss that. I came because I hesitated, trying to organize my chaotic thoughts, because I wanted to say, be careful. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, followed by something warmer. I always am. This is different. Sokolov knows you're coming, not where or when. We have the advantage of surprise. I stepped closer, driven by an impulse I didn't fully understand. You don't have to do this. Not for me. We could find another way. There is no other way, he said, his voice gentle despite the firmness of his words. Not one that ensures your safety completely. And if something happens to you? I asked, the question emerging before I could stop it. What happens to me then? Irina has instructions. You would be taken somewhere safe, given a new identity, the means to start over. He moved toward me, closing the distance between us. But nothing will happen to me. The confidence in his voice should have been arrogance, but somehow wasn't. It was simply certainty, the certainty of a man who had faced death many times and always emerged victorious. How can you be so sure? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Because I have something to come back for. His eyes held mine, intense and unwavering. Someone,